The sun was warm on the small colony world of Varela. Children's laughter filled the open square, echoing between the market stalls and stone houses. A group of alien children chased a glowing energy ball, their voices bright with joy. The ball floated and bounced in the air, changing color every time someone kicked it. They ran fast, their bare feet tapping against the smooth ground. But on the far edge of the square, sitting alone on a low stone wall, was a girl who could not join them. Her name was Leora. She had greenish skin that shimmered faintly under the sun, and her long black hair was tied back with a simple cloth. Her big amber eyes followed the game closely. She wanted to run with them, to feel the wind on her face, but she could not. One of her legs was gone. In its place was only an empty space wrapped in cloth. She had lost her leg 2 years ago in a mining accident. The mines on Varela were dangerous, and the poor often worked there to survive. Leora had been helping her mother carry supplies when part of the tunnel collapsed. Her mother did not survive. Since then, Leora had lived with an old caretaker who gave her food and shelter, but nothing could replace her leg. Prosthetic limbs existed, but they were expensive. On this small colony, only the rich or the lucky could afford them. Leora's friends from before the accident still smiled at her, but they no longer asked her to play. At first, they had waited for her to get better. Then, they had gotten used to seeing her sit on the wall. Now she was part of the scenery, a quiet figure watching from the side. The loneliness was heavy. She felt like a bird with wings cut off that day. While she was watching the children play, she noticed someone new in the square. A tall human man was walking slowly between the stalls. He wore a worn brown coat and a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes were sharp, scanning the crowd as if looking for something. A strange-looking metal case was slung over his shoulder. He didn't look like the usual traders who came to Varela. When his gaze passed over the square, it stopped on her for a moment. Leora looked away. She didn't like when people stared at her leg, or rather, where her leg should have been. But when she looked back, the man was still watching her. Not with pity, not exactly. There was something else in his eyes, a mix of curiosity and determination. Slowly, he walked toward her, his boots making soft thuds on the stone. "You're not playing," he said in a calm voice. His accent was strange, clearly not from her world. "I can't," she replied, looking at the ball in the distance. The man's eyes followed hers. "I see," he said softly. "But maybe you could." She frowned, unsure what he meant. Humans sometimes said things like that, without meaning them, and she had learned not to hope. "What's your name?" he asked. "Leora," she answered, her voice quiet. "Mine's Reed," he said. "Captain Reed." She studied him carefully. He didn't seem like a soldier or an officer. He looked more like someone who had traveled far and seen too much. "You want to run again?" he asked. Her heart jumped at the question. Of course she did, but it wasn't that simple. She shook her head. "It's impossible here." Reed tilted his head slightly, as if thinking, "Nothing's impossible," he said. "It just depends on how far you're willing to go." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked. Reed smiled faintly. "I might be able to help," he said, "but it will take courage and trust." She didn't answer right away. People had offered her many things in the past, but they usually wanted something in return, and she had nothing to give. From the market, someone called out to Reed. A merchant waved, but Reed ignored him. Instead, he leaned closer and said, "Meet me at the docks tomorrow morning." She blinked, surprised. "Why?" she asked. "Because," Reed said, his voice low and certain, "if you want your life to change, that's where it will begin." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Leora sat frozen on the wall, her mind spinning. Was this some kind of trick? Or did he really mean what he said? The thought of running again made her heart race, but fear whispered that she could be disappointed again. Still, a small spark of hope had been lit, and no matter how hard she tried, she could not put it out. That night, she lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling. The sound of the ball game still echoed in her head. The laughter, the running footsteps, the joy she had lost, and the voice of the strange human, telling her nothing was impossible. She didn't know what would happen if she went to the docks, but she knew that if she didn't go, she would always wonder. And wondering, she decided, was worse than fear. Morning light spilled across the docks of Varela. The air smelled of sea salt mixed with engine fumes from incoming ships. Workers shouted to each other as crates were moved from cargo holds to the waiting wagons. Leora stood in the shadows of a storage shed, her heart pounding. She clutched the edge of her old shawl around her shoulders. She wasn't sure if coming here was a mistake. Reed's ship stood at the far end of the dock. It was smaller than she expected, long and narrow with patched metal plates along the hull. The name Silver Path was painted on the side, though the letters were faded. She saw him near the ramp, speaking to a dock worker and signing a document on a datapad. When his eyes met hers, he gave a small nod. It wasn't the warm smile she expected. It was more like he was checking if she had the courage to show up. Leora walked toward him, slowly, her uneven step making her limp more obvious. Reed didn't comment. Instead, he motioned toward the ship. "Come aboard," he said simply. She hesitated, glancing at the busy dock. If she stepped onto that ramp, she would be leaving everything she knew. The thought made her chest tighten. Inside, the ship was dimly lit. The hum of the engines filled the narrow halls. Metal walls were lined with storage compartments, some marked with warning signs in languages she didn't understand. Reed led her to a small room with 2 chairs and a table bolted to the floor. He placed the metal case he had been carrying onto the table. Then he sat down, his hands resting lightly on the lid. "You said you wanted to run again," he began. Leora stayed standing, not ready to sit yet. "I said it wasn't possible," she replied. Reed's mouth curved slightly. "That's the same thing most people say before they see what's possible." He opened the case. Inside was a sleek, silver prosthetic leg, its surface smooth with faint blue lights running along the sides. It looked light but strong. Leora's breath caught in her throat. "That's," she whispered, stepping closer. "It's a Mark 7 adaptive limb," Reed said. "Built for both human and alien biology." Her hand hovered over it, not daring to touch. "It's not mine yet," she said, her voice almost breaking. "No." Reed agreed. "Not yet." She pulled her hand back, suspicious. "What do you want in return?" she asked sharply. Reed leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Nothing you can't give," he said. "I don't have money," she replied. "I'm not asking for money," he said. "I'm asking for your trust, and for you to travel with me to get it fitted." She frowned. "Why help me?" she asked. "Because I was where you are," he said quietly. "I lost a leg in the war. I know what it's like to watch life happen without you." His eyes were steady, but there was something in them, a shadow from his past. The hum of the ship seemed louder in the silence that followed. Leora finally sat down, her hands clenched in her lap. "Where would we go?" she asked. "To a station called Haver's Reach," Reed said. "There's an engineer there who can fit this leg to you perfectly." She swallowed. She had never been off Varela. Leaving would mean risking everything, but staying meant never running again. Before she could answer, a sharp voice called from outside the room. "Reed, you've got visitors." A tall, thin alien with copper-colored skin stepped in, his eyes darting between them. "They're asking about you," the alien said. "Uniforms not the friendly kind." Reed's jaw tightened. "Keep them talking," he told the alien. Then turned back to Leora. "We don't have much time," he said. "If you want to come, we leave now." Her mind raced. She had so many questions. Why were people looking for him? What dangers would she face? But she knew the chance would not come again. Slowly, she nodded. Reed stood, grabbed the case, and motioned for her to follow. They moved quickly through the narrow halls toward the ship's cockpit. From the front windows, she could see a group of armed officers on the dock, scanning the area. Reed powered up the engines. The sound grew into a deep roar, shaking the Floor beneath her feet. "Hold on," Reed said, flipping a series of switches. The ship lifted from the dock, the ground dropping away beneath them. The officers shouted and pointed, but the silver path was already turning toward the open sky. Leora gripped the arm of the chair beside her, her heart hammering. Clouds rushed past the windows as the ship climbed higher. Then, with a burst of light, they broke free of the atmosphere and into the endless black of space. Leora had never seen space before. Stars shone like scattered jewels, and the blue curve of her world faded behind them. She felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. Reed glanced at her. "Still think it's impossible?" he asked. She didn't answer, but deep inside, she knew her life had already changed, and this was only the beginning. The silver path drifted through the black sea of space. Leora sat in the co-pilot's chair, her eyes wide as she stared at the view. Planets, moons, and far-off suns floated like silent giants around them. She had never imagined space could feel so endless and quiet. Her hands gripped the armrests, both nervous and excited. Every small vibration of the ship made her heart beat faster. Reed sat beside her, steady and calm, his hands moving over the controls. He seemed to know exactly which buttons to press and which levers to pull. The hum of the ship was like a heartbeat, steady and constant. Now and then, lights on the control panel blinked, and Reed's eyes flicked to check them. "You'll get used to it," he said without looking at her. "Used to what?" she asked. "The sound, the feeling of flying through nothing," he replied. "The stars start to feel like old friends after a while." She gave a small smile. Though she still felt like a stranger in this place, after a long silence, she asked, "Why did you come to Varela?" Reed hesitated, his gaze fixed on the distant speck of a passing freighter. "I was delivering cargo," he said finally, "and looking for someone." "Someone?" she echoed. "Not you at first," he admitted. "But when I saw you, I knew I couldn't just leave." The words left her with more questions than answers. Before she could ask, the ship gave a sudden sharp jolt. A warning light flashed. Red on the control panel, Reed's jaw tightened. "We've got company," he said. Through the front window, Leora saw two small ships racing toward them, their lights flashing. They were painted in rough colors, with sharp, jagged wings. Not official patrols, but something worse. Pirates? She guessed, her voice shaking. Reed nodded. "Looks like it." The ships closed in fast, their weapons charging. "Hold on," Reed said, gripping the controls. The silver path tilted sharply to one side, and Leora's stomach flipped as they dodged the first volley of plasma fire. The black space outside lit up with streaks of red and white. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. "Are they after you?" she shouted. "They're after anyone who looks worth robbing," Reed replied, his eyes focused. "But yes, probably me more." Another blast rocked the ship, alarms wailing. Reed's fingers flew over the controls, switching power between shields and engines. Leora tried to steady herself. Gripping the side of the seat, she wanted to help, but she didn't know anything about flying a ship. "Open that panel," Reed pointed to a small box near her feet. She pulled it open and saw wires and blinking lights. "Blue wire, top row." "Pull it out," he said quickly. She hesitated only a second before yanking the wire. The ship shuddered as something changed in the hum of the engines. "Good," Reed said. "That gives us an extra burst of speed." The silver path shot forward, leaving the pirate ships behind, but one of them stayed close. Firing again, Reed narrowed his eyes, then flipped a switch. A long glowing net of energy shot from the ship's rear. It wrapped around the pirate ship's wing, spinning it out of control. Leora gasped as it tumbled away into the dark. Silence filled the cockpit again, except for the steady hum. Leora's heart was still racing. "You've done this before," she said quietly. "More times than I'd like," Reed replied, leaning back in his seat. He glanced at her. "You okay?" She nodded, though her hands were still trembling. "I've never been okay and terrified at the same time," she admitted. Reed chuckled softly. "Welcome to space travel. Hours passed as they drifted deeper into the galaxy. Reed showed her the basics of the control panel, how to check their position, how to read the scanners. Liara listened carefully, trying to remember every detail. It felt strange to be learning something so different from life on Varela, but it also felt good, like a door had opened to a world she never knew existed. As they neared a cluster of glowing space stations, Reed slowed the ship. One of the stations was shaped like a giant ring with lights all along its edges. "That's Havers. Reach," he said. Liara leaned forward, her eyes wide. It was beautiful and enormous. Dozens of ships moved in and out of its docking bays. "It's like a city in the sky," she whispered. Reed smiled faintly. "Exactly. But before they could dock, a deep voice crackled over the ship's come. "Unidentified vessel Silver Path. You are ordered to stop and prepare for inspection." Reed muttered something under his breath. "That's not standard," he said quietly. "They're not station security." Liara's stomach nodded. "Then who are they?" she asked. Reed's eyes hardened as he adjusted the controls. "Trouble," he said. "The kind that doesn't ask twice. Asterisk." The voice over the com repeated the command, louder this time. "Silver Path. Stop your engines or be fired upon." Liara's eyes darted to Reed. Her chest felt tight. The space station was so close, almost within reach, but the heavy tone of the voice told her there was no safe way to ignore it. Reed's hands hovered over the controls, his jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he might try to run. But then the ship's hum faded as he powered down the engines. "Better to see what they want than get blown to pieces," he said quietly, through the cockpit window. A dark shape moved toward them. It was a large ship, scarred and patched from many battles. Spikes of metal jutted from its hull like teeth. Its front docking arms reached out like claws. A deep metallic clank echoed through the Silver Path as the larger ship latched on. The lights inside flickered for a second. Liara gripped the seat, her pulse racing. Reed stood and pulled a small blaster from a hidden compartment. He slid it into a holster under his coat. "Stay close to me," he told her, his voice firm. Docking hatch hissed open. The smell of stale air and oil drifted in. 4 figures stepped inside, their boots heavy on the floor. They were alien pirates, tall with pale gray skin, ridged foreheads, and black eyes that reflected the light. Their armor was mismatched, made from stolen pieces of different suits. The one in front wore a long coat with silver buttons and carried a heavy rifle slung across his back. "Well, well," the leader said with a slow smile, his voice deep and rough. "Captain Reed." Reed didn't move. "Kren," he said flatly. "I thought you were dead." "Disappointed?" Kren asked with a low chuckle. He stepped closer, his black eyes sliding to Liara. "And who's this?" "No one," Reed said quickly. Kren's smile widened. "If she's no one, you won't mind if I take her." Liara's stomach dropped. She stepped back. But one of the pirates blocked her path. "She's under my protection," Reed said. His voice sharp. Kren tilted his head, pretending to think. "Protection costs credits, Reed. And you still owe me from that little job on Rascal 3. Reed's eyes narrowed. "That debt was settled," he said. Kren laughed, a harsh sound that made Liara's skin crawl. "Not in my books," he said. "So here's the deal. You give me the girl, I clear your debt." "No," Reed said without hesitation. The air in the room felt heavier. Kren's smile vanished, replaced by a cold stare. "You've gotten braver," he said, "or dumber." He gestured to his men, and 2 of them stepped forward. Weapons ready, Liara's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at Reed, wondering if he had a plan. In a sudden blur of movement, Reed pulled the blaster from under his coat. A shot rang out, hitting the rifle of the nearest pirate and sending it spinning to the floor. "Run!" Reed shouted, grabbing Liara's arm. They darted down the narrow corridor, the sound of boots pounding behind them. Flashes of plasma fire lit the metal walls as shots whizzed past. Liara stumbled but kept running, her mind focused only on keeping up with Reed. They turned a sharp corner and burst into the cargo hold. Reed slammed his hand on a control panel, and a heavy door slid shut behind them. "That won't hold them for long," he said, scanning the room. In the corner, a small hatch led to an escape tube. He pointed to it. "Climb in," he ordered. She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Leora crawled into the narrow tube, her hands gripping the cold metal edges. Reed followed quickly, sealing the hatch above them. The tube was dark, except for the faint glow of emergency lights. They slid down until they landed in a small docking bay, but it wasn't part of the silver path. Through the open hatch, Leora saw the vast docking area of Kren's ship. Dozens of crates were stacked in towering rows, and armed pirates moved among them. Reed pulled her behind a stack of crates. "We need to get to the maintenance deck," he whispered. "That's where I can cut the docking clamps and get us free." Leora nodded, her heart still pounding. They crept through the shadows, moving when the pirates' backs were turned. Every step felt like it could be their last. Just as they were nearing the side exit, a shout rang out. "There!" Leora froze as bright lights swung toward them. Reed grabbed her hand, and they bolted for the door. But before they could reach it, a blast from a stun rifle hit the wall beside them. The shockwave knocked Leora off balance, and she tumbled toward an open airlock. The emptiness of space yawned before her, cold and endless. Her fingers clawed for something to hold. She felt herself sliding toward the edge. Then, in a desperate move, Red lunged and caught her wrist. His grip was strong, pulling her back from the void. For a moment, they just knelt there breathing hard. The pirates closed in, weapons raised. This time there was no escape. The silver path finally slipped free from Kren's ship hours later. Reed's plan to overload the docking clamps had worked, but it had been close. Leora still felt the echo of fear in her chest from almost being pulled into space. Her hands trembled whenever she thought of it, but now, through the cockpit window, she could see Haver's Reach. It glowed like a ring of light in the dark, spinning slowly. Dozens of ships moved in and out of its open bays, like insects drawn to a flame. Leora pressed her face closer to the glass. "It's so big," she whispered. Reed glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. "It's one of the largest trading stations in this sector," he said. "Inside, you can find anything, if you know where to look." The ship glided toward a docking bay, guided by blinking lights along the station's edge. A mechanical voice crackled over the com, giving them permission to land. The docking platform was huge. Metal walkways stretched out like spiderwebs between massive ships. The air was filled with the hum of engines and the voices of hundreds of traders, pilots, and station workers. The smell of fuel mixed with the sweet scent of street food drifting from the open market. Leora stepped off the ramp, her eyes darting everywhere. She had never seen so many different species in one place. Some were tall and insect-like, with shiny shells. Others had fur, feathers, or even glowing skin. Reed walked beside her, keeping a steady pace. "Stay close," he said. "This place is safe enough if you keep your head down." They weaved through the crowd until they reached a small workshop tucked between two tall buildings. A flickering sign above the door read Jax's Repairs, Cybernetics, Mechanics, and Modifications. Inside, the air was warmer and smelled faintly of oil and metal. A broad-shouldered alien with 4 arms and silver goggles looked up from a workbench. His skin was a pale blue, and tiny mechanical parts floated in the air around him, held up by small drones. "Reed," the alien said in a deep voice, pulling off his goggles. "Didn't expect to see you alive." "Jax," Reed said with a grin. "I've got a job for you." Jax's gaze shifted to Leora. She felt his eyes sweep over her, pausing on the empty space where her leg should be. His expression softened slightly. "Ah," he said, "I see." Reed opened the metal case and placed the sleek prosthetic leg on the counter. "I need this fitted too." "Her," he said. Jax picked it up carefully, turning it in his hands. "Mark 7, he said. "Good piece of work, but it's incomplete." "Incomplete?" Leora asked, her stomach sinking. It needs a power source, Jax explained. A very specific crystal. Without it, it's just a piece of metal. Reed leaned on the counter, his voice low. Where can we get it? Jax hesitated, his eyes shifting toward the shop's closed blinds. There's a shipment coming in tonight, he said finally. But it's going straight to the black market auction, Leora frowned. Can't we just buy it? Jax gave a humorless laugh. You could, he said. If you had enough credits to buy an entire ship. Reed straightened, his jaw set. We'll go to the auction, he said. Jax shook his head. It's not just about money, Reed. The people running it are dangerous. You cross them, you disappear. Leora's chest tightened. After everything, could they really be stopped by one missing crystal? But Reed's eyes told her he wasn't giving up. Tell me where it is, he said firmly. Jax sighed and scribbled an address on a small piece of metal sheet. It's in the lower ring, Dock 9, he said. Starts after midnight. He glanced at Leora, his tone softening. If you go, keep your head down. And don't draw attention. Leora nodded, though her stomach churned. She wasn't used to dangerous places, but she couldn't turn back now. That night, Reed and Leora left the ship dressed to blend in. Reed wore a plain black coat, and Leora wrapped herself in a dark cloak with the hood pulled low. The lower ring of Haver's Reach was nothing like the bright markets above. Here, the lights were dim, the walls stained with age. Shadows moved in the corners, and quiet voices whispered deals in languages she didn't understand. They found Dock 9 behind a row of sealed cargo doors. A narrow entrance led to a wide chamber filled with people. At the center, under a bright spotlight, was a raised platform. Items sat on display. Rare weapons, strange artifacts, and crates sealed with glowing locks. A tall, sharp-featured alien in a silver robe stood at the front, calling out bids in a booming voice. Guards in heavy armor stood along the walls, their weapons ready. Reed leaned close to Leora. The crystal will be near the end, he whispered. She kept her head low, her eyes scanning the crowd. Every person here looked like they could be trouble. Minutes passed, and her heart pounded faster with each item that was sold. Finally, the auctioneer held up a small glowing shard. This, he announced, is a Zerathium core, pure and powerful. Leora's breath caught. It was beautiful, glowing softly like a captured star. Reed's eyes locked on it, but before they could make a move, a voice from the crowd shouted a high bid. The bidder was an alien warlord, huge and broad, wearing armor carved with sharp symbols. Reed muttered under his breath, "Of course it's him." Leora looked at him in alarm. "You know him?" She whispered. "Yes," Reed said grimly. And this just got a lot more complicated. Asterisk. The room felt smaller the moment the warlord raised his hand to bid. Leora's stomach twisted. The alien was enormous, his armor shining under the auction. Lights, scars ran across his face, and his eyes were sharp and cold. Even without Reed telling her, she could feel that this was someone dangerous. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the chamber. 100,000 credits, he announced, pointing toward the warlord. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. That amount was enough to buy a small ship. Reed kept his hood low, his eyes fixed on the glowing crystal. He leaned close to Leora, his voice low. "We're not winning this with money." She looked at him in confusion. "Then how?" She whispered. Reed's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "By making sure our friend over there never gets to collect it." Before she could ask more, the auctioneer called for higher bids. Another trader shouted a number, but the warlord immediately topped it. It was clear no one else dared to challenge him seriously. Reed scanned the room quickly. At the far corner, a narrow side door stood half hidden in shadow. 2 guards stood near it, but their attention was more on the crowd than the exit. "That's where they'll take the items after the sale," Reed whispered. "If we can get to that door, we can intercept the crystal before it leaves the building." Leora's heart raced. "You mean steal it?" she asked. Reed's eyes flicked to her. "Call it reclaiming something the galaxy doesn't need in the wrong hands." He moved slowly through the crowd, using the noise of the bidding to mask their steps. Leora followed close, keeping her hood low. She tried not to look at the warlord, afraid his gaze might lock on her. The auctioneer struck the final note. "Sold to the Honorable General Varric," he declared. Applause and scattered cheers filled the chamber. Varric stood, towering over everyone, and made his way toward the platform to claim his prize. Reed and Leora slipped along the edge of the crowd until they reached the side door. One guard glanced their way, but Reed stepped forward confidently. "Special delivery instructions," he said in a firm tone, flashing a small metal card. The guard squinted at it, then waved them through. Beyond the door, the noise of the auction faded into a dim hallway. Crates and sealed boxes lined the walls. 2 workers were loading items onto a small hover cart, and there, resting on a padded tray, was the crystal, glowing softly in the half-light. Leora's breath caught in her throat. It looked almost alive. Reed moved toward it, his hand reaching out, but a low growl stopped him. They turned to see Varric himself filling the doorway. His guards flanked him, weapons drawn. "I knew you wouldn't pay," Varric said in a deep voice, his gaze fixed on Reed. "Still trying to cheat your way through life, I see." Reed's hand hovered near his blaster. "Better than buying power you don't deserve," he said evenly. Varric stepped closer, his armor clinking with each heavy movement. "This is mine," he said, pointing at the crystal. "Not anymore," Reed replied. Without warning, Reed grabbed the tray, shoving it toward Leora. "Run!" he barked. She clutched the crystal to her chest and darted down the hallway, her cloak billowing behind her. Shouts erupted behind her. The sound of boots pounded against the floor. She weaved between stacks of crates, her mind focused only on escape. Suddenly, a guard stepped out from a side corridor, blocking her path. Before he could grab her, Reed appeared from the shadows, striking him hard and sending him sprawling. "Keep moving," he said, pulling her forward. They burst out into the cold, dim streets of the lower ring. The market here was still active, but the air was tense. Reed guided her through narrow alleys, taking sharp turns to lose their pursuers. The sound of Varric's men shouting orders echoed behind them. One wrong turn, and they'd be caught. Finally, they reached a hidden stairwell leading up toward the brighter levels. They climbed quickly, Leora's breath coming in short gasps. Her arms ached from holding the crystal so tightly. When they emerged onto a crowded street, Reed slowed his pace. Blending into the flow of people was their best chance now. After several tense minutes, the shouting faded. Reed led her into a quiet storage room off the main road. He locked the door and leaned against it. Catching his breath, Leora looked down at the glowing shard in her hands. "Is this really worth all that?" she asked. Reed's eyes softened. "For you," he said. "Absolutely." She didn't know what to say. The crystal's light reflected in her amber eyes. Somewhere deep inside, hope grew stronger. Maybe this journey really would end with her running again. But she also knew that enemies like Varric wouldn't forget being robbed. And the thought of what might come next sent a chill through her. Reed seemed to read her thoughts. "We've still got to get this fitted before anyone else catches up," he said. "Let's get back to Jocks." She nodded, tucking the crystal safely into the folds of her cloak. Whatever danger was ahead, she was ready to face it. For the first time in years, she felt like her future was moving towards something worth fighting for. The workshop was quiet, except for the soft hum of Jocks's tools. The smell of warm metal and oil filled the air. Leora sat on a padded chair in the center of the room, her cloak folded neatly beside her. The Zerathium core lay on the table, glowing faintly. Jocks's 4 hands moved quickly, slotting the crystal into the base of the sleek prosthetic leg. A soft blue light ran along its edges, pulsing like a heartbeat. Reed stood nearby, arms crossed, watching every move. His eyes were alert. But there was something else there, a calm, quiet pride. "You're lucky," Jock said without looking up. "This model is one of the best ever made." Leora's hands gripped the edges of the chair. Her heart raced. She had dreamed of this moment for so long that it almost didn't feel real. "All right," Jack said. "Let's attach it." He knelt beside her, carefully fitting the prosthetic to the smooth metal ring at the end of her leg. It clicked into place with a soft sound. A faint vibration traveled up her body. "Stand slowly," Jack instructed, his voice calm. Leora placed her hands on the armrests and pushed herself up for a moment. Her balance wavered. Then she found her footing. The room seemed to blur around her. She could feel the weight of the leg, but it wasn't heavy. It moved with her, as if it had always been part of her. Her throat tightened. It works," she whispered. Reed's lips curved into a small smile. "Told you nothing was impossible," he said quietly. Jax handed her a small remote. "This will let you adjust the settings, speed, strengths, stability," he explained. "But first, you need to get used to walking." Leora took a deep breath and took her first step. It was slow, shaky, but steady. She took another, then another. Each movement felt more natural than the last minutes later. She was walking around the workshop without holding on to anything. Jax watched with a satisfied nod. "You'll be running in no time," he said. Leora turned to Reed, her amber eyes bright. "Outside," she said. "I want to try it outside." The three of them stepped out into the open market of Haver's Reach. The upper ring was alive with sound. Vendors calling out, music playing, children laughing. Leora took a deep breath of the cool air. She glanced at Reed, who gave her a nod. Then she started to run. At first, her steps were short, careful. But the leg responded perfectly, matching her pace. Her speed increased. And soon she was weaving through the crowd. Her laughter rose above the noise of the market. It was a sound Reed hadn't heard from her before. Free, bright, alive. She turned a corner and entered a wide-open square. The glowing energy ball game was in full swing. Alien children darted back and forth, chasing the shifting lights. When they saw her, some froze in surprise. One boy grinned and tossed her the ball. She caught it easily for a moment. She just stood there, holding it. Then she kicked it, and it sailed high into the air. The game burst into motion again. Leora ran with them, the wind brushing her face. She dodged, spun, and kicked, her new leg moving like it had always been there. She scored a point, and the children cheered. From the edge of the square, Reed stood with his hands in his coat pockets. He didn't join in, just watched. But the look in his eyes said everything. After the game, Leora jogged over to him, slightly out of breath but smiling wide. "I forgot what this felt like," she said. Reed tilted his head. "Feels good?" "Better," she replied. "It feels like I'm me again." Jax came up behind them, carrying